She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God, and remember the 144,000. Jesus is coming next year. She took all the money out of her bank account today. My truck has gone from the airport. She went to the airport and got it.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
She threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes. She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
In November 2020, the entire state of Idaho was in uproar about the whereabouts of two missing kids, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and her younger brother, 7-year-old JJ Vallow. Everybody hoped for the safe return of the kids. The only two people who didn't seem concerned were Lori and Chad Daybell, their mother and stepfather. The newlyweds were far away in Hawaii without a care in the world. The search for the children uncovered a trail of dead spouses and a cult that inspired multiple murders. For many people who lived on the beautiful island of Kauai, Hawaii, November 5th, 2019 was just another Tuesday. But for one couple, it marked the beginning of their lives together. Chad and Lori Daybell had come from Idaho to tie the knot. When they first met, they were both married, but both their spouses were now out of the picture and they were ready to start their lives together. Lori Daybell was actually born Lori Cox on June 26, 1973 in San Bernardino, California. Shortly after graduating at the age of 19, Lori married her high school sweetheart, but the marriage ended in divorce shortly afterward. At 22, married again. The couple had a son named Colby. 2 years later, they divorced. 5 years later, Lori married husband number 3. In 2002, they had a daughter, Tylee Ryan, but by 2005, they divorced. In 2006, she married husband number 4, Charles Vallow. In 2013, the couple adopted Charles's grandnephew, 2-year-old Joshua Jackson Vallow, fondly called JJ for short. He was an autistic child with special needs, and Tylee fully embraced the role of big sister. She spent every waking moment taking care of his every need and even jokingly referred to him as her own child. In late 2014, the family moved to Kauai, Hawaii. Sometime in 2017, Lori started to get into essays on preparing for the end of the world. Her favourite books were authored by Chad Daybell, a Mormon Doomsday author. Charles heard voices telling him to move back to Arizona, so the Vallow family packed up their things and made the move. In the fall of 2018, Lori befriended Melanie Gibb. Together, they attended a Doomsday event. It was there that Lori met her favourite Doomsday author, Chad Daybell. The two hit it off, and by the end of the event, they were inseparable. After the event, they began to communicate privately through emails. Chad often told Lori that they had been married in 7 previous lifetimes. When Lori's husband Charles went out of town on a business trip, Lori used the opportunity to host an overnight gathering for her fellow Doomsday believers. She also invited Chad. Chad captivated Lori with his religious beliefs. He told her he had lived 31 different lives on various Earths and could see auras. People with dark auras were from this earth and followed Satan, while those with light auras were followers of Jesus Christ. Lori, he said, was an eternal being of 21 separate lives to eliminate evil. The thought of this new purpose excited her, and Lori became more and more fixated on him. She shared her own otherworldly beliefs that people could get possessed and turned into zombies. The only cure for becoming a zombie was to be killed. The two started to go on Doomsday podcasts together to share their beliefs. By February 2019, Lori was ready for a change of husbands. While Charles was away on a business trip, she called and told him she no longer cared for him or their adopted son JJ. According to Lori, the second coming of Christ was on July 22, 2020, and she was a God sent to carry out the work to prepare for coming. And if Charles got in the way, she would kill him and get an angel to dispose of his body. Charles was worried for JJ and tried to fly back home, only to find out that Lori had cancelled his flight. Charles quickly got a new ticket and flew back home to Arizona. When he arrived, he found out that the truck he had kept at the airport parking lot was gone. He eventually made it home, but there was no sign of Lori or JJ. In addition, his laptop, his clothes, and $35,000 from their joint account was gone. Charles filed for a divorce and requested for a protection order against Lori, stating that he feared for his life and that of his son. But a month later, Charles stopped the divorce proceedings and hoped for a reconciliation with Lori so he could get JJ back. Lori's older brother Adam contacted Charles and told him about his concerns with Lori's increasingly bizarre beliefs. He too was concerned for the children's safety. The two planned to stage an intervention for her. On July 11, 2019, Charles went over to Lori's home in Arizona to pick up JJ and enroll him back in school. It would be the first time he would see his son since February, but he never showed up. Later that day, a 911 call came from Alex Cox, Lori's younger brother.
911, where is your emergency?
It's at 55. I'm in police in an ambulance. I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
He had shot Charles twice in the chest. According to Alex, he had confronted Charles about assaulting Lori. Charles had allegedly struck him in the head with the bat, so he went to get his gun. It was self-defense, Alex said. He was only trying to protect his sister and his niece, Tylee. The police agreed, and no charges were filed. Later that day, Lori's neighbours were shocked to see the new widow hosting a pool party the same day that Charles had been killed by her brother. Weeks would pass before Lori finally texted Charles's older children from his first marriage that their father had died. When they tried to find out more details about his murder, Lori was dodgy and vague. Yet Charles's body was not even in the ground when Lori called his insurance company and asked about his $1 million life insurance policy. She was shocked to learn that he had changed his beneficiary information and Lori would not be receiving any money. She was not given any more information on who would be getting the life insurance policy. But 2 weeks later, Charles's sister received a text from Lori. It was a photo of the change of beneficiary form that she had found, and it read, 5 kids and no money, and his sister gets everything. Regardless, Lori was now free to get married to husband number 5, and her eyes were set on Chad Daybell. To be closer to him, Lori, JJ, and Tylee moved to a housing complex in Rexburg, Idaho. Her brother Alex Cox also came along and got an apartment on the same floor. At first, Tylee had planned to move in with a friend in Arizona, but she was very protective of her little brother and decided to go, especially as Lori had just gotten rid of JJ's service dog. Unfortunately for Lori, Chad Daybell was still in a marriage of his own. Chad Daybell and Tammy Douglas got married in 1990. They had 5 children together and settled in Springville, Utah. In 2004, Chad set up his own publishing company, which he used to produce articles and fictional books around his quirky beliefs of the end times. In 2015, Chad said he heard a voice tell him to move his family from Springville, Utah to Salem, Idaho. The family made the move. On October 19, 2019, Tammy passed away at the age of 49. Chad called her father and tearfully told him that Tammy had gone to bed the night before with a terrible cough, but the next morning she was dead. Her father was confused. He had talked to Tammy 2 weeks before and she had been perfectly healthy. When the coroner asked Chad if he wanted an autopsy performed, he declined. 2 days after Tammy's death, Chad raised eyebrows when he contacted the insurance company about a payout. He eventually got almost $500,000. 2 weeks later, in a small private ceremony, Chad and Lori exchanged vows in Hawaii. When they were asked about their kids, Lori said she had no children who were minors and that Tylee, her second child, had died back in 2017. The new couple took pictures of themselves wearing garlands of purple flowers and sipping champagne without a care in the world. But not everyone was happy to see those pictures. 2 of these people were Larry and Kay Woodwalk. They were the grandparents of 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow. They had not heard from him in months, and every time they called Lori and tried to talk to their grandson, she would say he wasn't there.
Lori, please let us know that JJ's okay. Please just let us know. We need to see him.
Finally, in November 2019, the grandparents contacted the police to conduct a welfare check on the children. When police got to Lori and Chad's residence, Lori told them that JJ was with her friend, Melanie, in Arizona. Investigators contacted Melanie and she told them that JJ was not with her. She had not seen him since September. Now, worried that something bad had happened to JJ, early the next day the authorities returned to Lori's home with a search warrant, but both Lori and Chad were long gone. 10 days later, Melanie called the investigators and told them everything she knew about Lori. According to Melanie, after the first police visit, Chad and Lori had asked her to lie that JJ was in Arizona with her. They had even urged her to take pictures with random kids that might look like JJ and send it. But Melanie was more worried about where exactly the kids were, not just JJ, but his older sister, 16-year-old Tylee. This was the first time investigators realized there could be another missing child. Lori was vague and combative in her answers. She reminded Melanie that since Tylee turned 13, her spirit had turned dark and she had become a zombie, pointing out behaviours like sitting still, watching TV, and an increased vocabulary as signs of a zombie. Lori also told Melanie that it was her and Chad's mission to rid the world of zombies. Meanwhile, Melanie, who had recorded their conversation, now handed it over to the police. Investigators interviewed people in the area to piece together the last known whereabouts of both children. The last time Tylee was seen was on September 8, 2019, 2 months ago. She and JJ visited Yellowstone National Park with their mother and uncle. JJ was last seen 2 weeks later on September 23rd when a doorbell video captured him playing with a friend. The next day, Lori called JJ's school and told them that he was staying with his grandmother. She later called back and said she was withdrawing him and would be homeschooling him. When they searched the home, they found that a lot of the kids' things were not there. Some days later, they located a storage unit in Lori's name. In it, they found all of the kids' items: bikes, a scooter, winter clothing, a photo album with pictures of JJ and Tylee, sports equipment, a backpack with JJ's initials, and a jersey with Colby Ryan's name on it. Video footage showed Lori and her brother, Alex, moving items in and out of the locker just before she disappeared. As concerns about the children's whereabouts picked up, officers with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office began to take a closer look at Tammy's death. Her body was exhumed and an autopsy was performed in Utah. The result concluded that she had been suffocated to death. They also found out that on October 9, 2019, Tammy had reported a strange incident. She had been in her driveway when a masked man had shot at her with what she thought was a defective paintball gun. They had chalked it up as a prank. 10 days later, Tammy was dead. Investigators wondered if her death had anything to do with the missing kids. They were now desperate to find them. In December 2019, Lori's brother Alex Cox was found dead. An autopsy revealed that he had gotten blood clots wedged in his lung, made worse by high blood pressure. Any secrets Alex had with him were taken to the grave. Authorities finally located Lori and Chad in January 2020. They were back vacationing on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. Lori was served with a court order to physically produce JJ and Tylee at the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare or the Rexburg Police Department within 5 days. The deadline passed with no sign of either children. On February 20th, 2020, she was extradited to Idaho and arrested. She faced charges of desertion, non-support of children, resisting an officer, solicitation, and contempt of court. She was held on a $1 million bail. Her first son, Colby, visited her in prison and begged to know the whereabouts of his siblings. But every time he did, Lori gave one ominous response: "Everything's going to be revealed soon." For months, the police continued to search for the missing children. Lori's first son, her older brother, and JJ's grandparents held press conferences begging Lori to assist investigators in locating the missing children. They even raised a $20,000 reward for their safe return, but Lori remained quiet on JJ and Tylee's whereabouts. Eventually, investigators obtained Cox's cell phone records and compared his activities on the days that Tylee probably disappeared to the other days the same month. On September 9th, 2020, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., Alex was in Lori's apartment. It was the only time of the month he was there at that time. He returned to his apartment by 4 a.m., but by 9 a.m. he was miles away on Chad Daybell's property near the east end of the barn. He stayed there till 11:30 p.m., then returned to his apartment. That same day, Chad texted his late wife Tammy about shooting a raccoon and burying it at the pet cemetery on the property. He also wrote about burning some grass in the fire pit. When investigators talked to his neighbours, they learned that the fire pit in the back of the Daybell property was hardly ever used until the last few months. So what had they burned that day? Bright and early on June 9, 2020, Fremont County Sheriff deputies and officers of the Rexburg Police Department surrounded the red brick ranch house that was the home of Chad Daybell. Officers went into the property and meticulously swept through the building before heading straight to the backyard. Chad himself sat in his SUV outside the property and kept watch. At 11 a.m, he made a call to wife Lori, who was still behind bars, and told her what was happening. Barely an hour later, in the backyard at the pet cemetery close to the tree in a shallow grave under 3 white stones, they pulled out a trash bag and found a body wrapped in a blue children's blanket. When they opened the blanket, they found a body wrapped in duct tape. The head was covered in a nylon bag and taped up as well. When they cut open the tape, they found 7-year-old JJ still wearing his red pajamas and a pulled-up night diaper. There were scratches on the side of his neck. Shortly after, close to the fire pit, Tylee's body was found, 4 pieces of it. She had been dismembered and her body burned in a green bucket. Bits and pieces of her body were scattered all around the property. As soon as word that the bodies had been found came out, Chad attempted to flee the scene, but was promptly chased down and arrested on charges of concealment of evidence and taken into custody. July 22, 2020, the day that Chad and Lori swore that the world would end, came and went uneventfully with the 2 behind bars. Chad was indicted in connection to the death of Vallow's children, along with conspiracy to murder in the death of his wife, as well as 1 count of first-degree murder in her death. Lori was charged in connection to 4 deaths in 2 states: Vallow's children, her husband Charles Vallow, and Daybell's former wife, Tammy Daybell. They both pled not guilty. Chad and Lori are being tried separately. While Chad's case is still pending, Lori went to court. Her defense painted her as a protective mother who fell for a wannabe cult leader, but the prosecution believed that Lori was a power-hungry manipulator who used sex and power to manipulate her brother and her lover into carrying out crimes, including killing her 2 youngest children so that they could collect Tammy's life insurance money and the children's social security and survivor benefits. Finally, on May 13, 2023, after 3 years of investigation, a verdict was returned. Lori Vallow has been found guilty of all 7 charges placed on her, including 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on Tylee, JJ and Tammy, 2 counts of first-degree murder on Tylee and JJ, and 1 count of grand theft. But the case is still far from over. Chad Daybell's time in court is still pending. Will he answer to his crimes or will he walk? Only time will tell.